David, thanks for joining me.
George, you look good. You've been working out?
You know, it's just all the Stroop waffles. Well, I have heard a lot of murmurings about your sense of humor throughout the event.
Got me into a lot of trouble.
I was wondering if actually we could start there. I think the audience would love to hear a joke just to kick things off.
You know, since you asked so nicely, I guess I will lead with a joke. So, unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, my uncle passed away. You don't have to be sad. It's just a setup for the joke. And I found out that I had inherited a painting and a violin, and I got pretty excited, so I had them appraised and authenticated. It turns out I am the proud owner of a Stradivarius and a Rembrandt. Sadly, Stradivarius is a shit painter, and Rembrandt doesn't make very good violin. We start.
Perfect. It's timely. I actually, just 2 days ago, before the event, was at the Rijksmuseum. So got to enjoy some of the Amsterdam culture. But I have to say, this event has been really impressive. And you guys have been doing it for what, 4 years now?
Yep.
Wow. So I guess it would be great to hear a little bit about what you took away from this year's event and kind of how the whole experience has evolved over the past couple of years.
Well, I mean, this is much, much larger. The number of people is just, I think it's something like 700 people, you know, which is just twice what we had last year. And just the rate of growth has just been outstanding. There's been kind of a change in the people. There's still a lot of developers, a lot of business people, but I think for the first time, I think we've seen a lot of people who are just like sort of retail and user participants who are coming to see what's going on. And that's super exciting. I always come back from these events energized. You know, the community is like an abstract thing to me. And even when I meet people on Zoom or, you know, I talk to people, it doesn't have the impact of walking into a room with hundreds of people, just the visceral impact of that and the way it just makes everything so tangible. It's just an amazing experience. I just thank you for everybody who's made this experience so fantastic. This is the first year we had sponsors. Never had sponsors at Apex before. I think you've seen some of the booths here, like a significant presence of companies showing what they were building. And that's super exciting.
Wow. Well, there's one thing you left out, which is all the announcements that Ripple made. You mind kind of giving a TLDR on all the stuff on the roadmap to come after this?
Well, so two of the announcements are kind of funny. So we announced the name of the Ripple stablecoin as Ripple USD. That's what probably most of you are calling it anyway, so not very surprising announcement. The ticker symbol, RLUSD. Congrats to the Twitter sleuths who figured that one out before the announcement too. That's by the way, Twitter sleuths are just absolutely amazing. You just cannot keep anything secret in the social media age. Then there was the announcement of the name of the XRP Ledger EVM sidechain, which is the XRP Ledger EVM sidechain. I wanted to call it Niobium. I thought that would be super cool, but they're like, no one will know what that is. I'm like, I want a super cool name, but they're like, no, you got to call it what it is. But, you know, I think that's important. I think some people have thought about it just as like, oh, we have that too, just trying to check a box. But I think that's going to become a valuable part of the ecosystem, you know, with XRP as its native token and the Axelar bridge. Let's see, the other announcement was Archex, which is going to bring probably, you know, at least $100 million in tokenized real-world assets to the XRP ledgers, enterprise-grade tokenized securities, which are, you know, that's another one of those enablers for enterprise DeFi, you know, with being able to use them as collateral and rehypothecate and those kinds of things. That's what builds DeFi ecosystems. And the last one was the geographic focus with grants in Japan and Korea, which are areas where there's just been an enormous amount of XRP ledger development. I'm not really sure why. It's kind of a little surprising to me, but I guess those areas have just been major areas of innovation, and we have sometimes not paid as much attention to them as we should have. And so we're going to fix that.
Awesome. I'd love to kind of dive in a little bit deeper into some of the kind of, you mentioned bridges, but some of the broader interoperability work that you guys have planned.
Yeah, that is a huge challenge in the entire industry. Everybody's working on building better bridges and better connectivity. As I've said before, users can't have to worry about how the technology works. If the path to mass adoption is when the technology just works and just solves the problem. And Ripple can't build every tool that people want. Ripple can't build a compelling ecosystem all by ourselves. People have to be able to access the products and services that work best for them. Asset portability is like the first step. That's not going to do the whole thing, but that's definitely a critical enabler. That solves like real problems that people have today. And asset portability through the Axelar bridge will at least enable XRP as a native token on the EVM sidechain, which is I think that's big because the XRP ecosystem was one chain, and the XRP ecosystem could be more chains if we had good bridging. And so we'll have that for the EVM sidechain, but that's just a piece to the interoperability puzzle, and that's not something that Ripple's going to solve. That's something that everybody in the industry is working on, and I just hope that gets better. Again, the path to mass adoption is when users. This solves my problem. You know what I mean? Like most people who use the internet have no idea how it works, and they don't have to. And that's always how you get mass adoption. I was an early internet adopter. Anybody here edit DOS batch files for TCP with TCP/IP settings? Anybody that old? Nobody in this. Oh, yeah, one person. Thank you. I'm not the oldest internet user here, but like that's the browser. If you look at the adoption of the internet, the browser, the graphical browser. Does anybody use the internet before graphical browsers? Probably the same person. But yeah, I mean, it was fantastic for research and it was fantastic for keeping in touch with people around the globe. But there's no way it was going to get mass adoption until it is painless and intuitive. And that's what we're going to do with the bridging problem. But it's going to take a while.
Certainly, but another element that I think a lot of people see as necessary for mass adoption are use cases and applications that do solve those problems. So I really appreciated, and I think it really resonated with a lot of people, the point you made earlier yesterday when you opened around inclusivity. And being open to new use cases, new applications, not just things that you guys are more top-down enabling at Ripple. So I'm kind of curious, over the years, have there been any use cases or applications that have been really popular that surprised you?
Well, the explosion of NFTs kind of surprised me. I get some of the financial use cases for NFTs, but the NFTs around collectibles and artwork, I mean, it makes sense now, but it was quite shocking to me how big that ecosystem grew and how quickly. That's calmed down a little bit. I think the other thing that was completely out of left field to me was the whole meme coin thing. And I think still that's one of those things that like, it's cool when it's people having fun and, but when you see people losing huge amounts of money because they thought that, prices would go up forever, that's kind of a little bit depressing to me. I do have to say another thing that's been surprising to me is the way the political situation has changed in the United States in just the past month or so. One of the things that is amazing is like if you poll people in the United States, you will find that for people who care about crypto, they're almost all positive. There are very few people who are passionately anti-crypto.
Yeah.
Right? There are a couple, but like in the
weirdos
voting
on Twitter.
Right. There are people who are niche people with unusual positions, but if like in the voting public, the more passionate you are about crypto, the more pro-crypto you're likely to be. And so what started to happen in American politics is there's really no advantage to being anti-crypto, whereas it's a huge disadvantage because there are maybe 16% of voters who really passionately care. And the sort of, Coinbase going public was a sort of inflection event. I think USDC, which is a very regulated product, that's enabled completely, it has anonymous holders, right? No, Circle doesn't know who they are. And it's enabled DeFi ecosystems that are on decentralized blockchains. So those kinds of rapid acceleration of like real utility, always a pleasant surprise. I will say the one negative surprise to me has been the slow adoption of blockchain for payments. Enterprise adoption for payments has been pretty good. That's what Ripple's been focused on. But sort of retail end user adoption for payments has really been slow. And I think like the product market fit feels good. The problem is last mile. So if you're a person who the only way to get money to you is to hand you cash over the counter at a grocery store or post office or something, tech can't solve that. There's no technology that can solve that problem. So I think that's been another drag to mass adoption and to being more inclusive is those on-ramps and off-ramps.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And what do you think kind of solves that last problem? Because, I mean, early kind of in Bitcoin forum days, you heard a lot about like farm to table Bitcoin economies. But, I think you've recently seen more practical approaches around using, more centralized on and off ramps. So, how much of that do you think lives on chain? What's through kind of existing intermediaries? And are there kind of other options or ways people might not be thinking about how to kind of make the end user experience a little more seamless?
I think there's a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem. If there were people who needed these payment services, companies that have these payment rails would start to offer blockchain off-ramps. And if there were blockchain off-ramps and on-ramps, then people could come into these payment systems. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. What's going to drive, the way you solve a chicken and egg problem is you get one side of it first, and then you get the other side for free. So what we're starting to see is DeFi ecosystems grow, throughout the different blockchains, and that's creating a demand for ways to get money on and off. If you're a company, let's say you can, hand cash to people over the counter in Mexico. That's tremendously valuable, and there's no technology that can edge you out of the business, right? Yep. No technology is going to put money in the hands of a person who's living in a cash economy. Only your network will do that. And today, like in the TradFi ecosystem, the only way you can be a cash out is if you also have the mash and cash in, and you have the conversion, and you do the whole thing. They're your customer from beginning to end. It makes logical sense for me to say to you, hey, look, you may not have cash in Western Europe, but there's someone else who has cash in Western Europe, and if you allow them to use your cash out over the counter in Mexico, that's business you would not have. So that, I think eventually people, that pitch is going to start to make sense, and that's kind of how we're going to unlock that.
Sounds a lot like the payments and remittance use case, you guys have had some success with.
Yeah. That's exactly the pitch that we made. That we made, and I think the biggest obstacle was again the chicken and egg problem.
Yep.
It's very difficult to say to somebody who's not a believer in a space, if you build it, they will come. They'll be like, you have to show me that the business is here. We're getting there. I mean, we're seeing that ramp up in institutional adoption in the past year that I think will help us to untangle that.
Another chicken and the egg I often see is around real world assets or RWA, particularly when you kind of think about large funds, say like tokenizing a credit fund or something, where there are a lot of purported advantages around distribution. There's also some purported efficiency gains. Where do you see adoption coming from there, and what's going to kind of be the explosion that allows that ecosystem to take off more meaningfully?
I think it's going to be what the token holders can do on the back end that's going to make it so exciting. If there's no difference between launching on a public blockchain and launching on a private blockchain, that all that happens is that the same people, hold the asset, it's just they hold tokens instead, and they get the same returns and do the same things with it. That's not exciting. There's just no reason to do that. There's a reason why we put things on private ledgers rather than on public blockchains. Public blockchains, are expensive and they're complicated. But if there's something that you can do on the other side with the token that you couldn't do without it, if you can use it as collateral for a loan, if you can rehypothecate it so that people can have fractional ownership who wouldn't be able to hold the underlying security because it's not available in their jurisdiction or they can't meet the KYC AML requirements, it's obvious why Circle doesn't launch USDC on a private ledger.
Yeah.
It would be completely useless, right? It's the DeFi ecosystem that it enables. It's being able to use it as collateral for loans. It's being able to get a return on it, additional return. If we can enable those types of ecosystems, then it will be very compelling. And the thing that's the most different about those institutional use cases versus, let's say, enterprise payments, if an enterprise uses XRP for payments, their customers aren't blockchain users. But these applications and these DeFi applications, the customers, the people who hold the tokens, they're DeFi users, they're blockchain users. And that's, I think, that path to mass adoption.
And speaking of it, I know we're running a little tight on time, but I think that is